Alright, you guys are going to have to tell me how sound sounds today. I've been playing a bunch of PUBG and Escape from Tarkov. So my sounds are all different. So you guys are going to have to let me know. Let me know if sounds are all wackadoodle today. Okay, so where are my manners? Hello and what is up, YouTube? My name is G3Iron. And today we are doing a live reading of the Harvest, not patch notes, but Balance Manifesto. So, a couple of news and notes. Patch notes should be out tomorrow at roughly sometime past this time. So, we'll be doing a live reading of that. That is always a good time to be together as a community. Honestly, these 2 days are probably two of my favorite 2 days out of every league cycle. Just because we have so much good discussion, there's so much theory crafting that goes on, there's so much potential. If you enjoy sports, I equate the Balance Manifesto and the patch reading notes, like the patch notes reading, I equate those to like the draft, right? To whatever a sports team draft would be, right? It's like, it's the potential where everything is potentially good, right? Your team could win the championship this year or win the big one, right? Like your build could be ridiculously OP. It could not be nerfed. It could be a great starter. It could be a great finisher. Your build could consequently make a terrible decision or have a terrible decision happen to it, and it just completely gets nerfed into the ground. So this is one of the reasons why I enjoy these couple of days worth of hanging out and worth of having a good time together. Okay, so all that being said, let's take a dive right into these Balance Manifesto notes. I just wrapped up eating dinner. I got a ping notification that this came out while I was eating dinner. So let's see if my digestive system can process all of this wonderful news all at the same time. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. If you're in chat, feel free to drop us a comment. Super chat is enabled. I have to shill out, right? That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be a shill for YouTube. Super chat is enabled. So if you want to drop a super chat, you can do that. If you want to support us on Patreon, you can do that. And of course, if you want to drop us a one-time tip, you can do that via PayPal. By the way, this Balance Manifesto is all included down below in the video description. So without any more shilling and shameless promotion, oh, if you want to join our Discord, you can do that as well. That's all down below. All right, here we go. Let's jump in. Every expansion provides an opportunity for us to reassess the current meta, improve game mechanics that are currently weak, and reduce the power of those that are excessively strong. Cyclone. Cyclone. You'll see more details in the patch notes tomorrow, but in the meantime, our team has outlined some of the changes you'll be reading about and the goals we had in mind while making these changes. Alright, Game Balance Manifesto. In Path of Exile Harvest, we're putting much of our balance focus on brands. I'm going to go full screen with this. Can I go full screen? There we go. We're putting much of our balance focus on brands, war cries, and two-handed weapons. As a result of Delirium going core, we've also taken the opportunity to balance cluster jewels and their place within the game. We've worked to improve two-handed weapons with big slow hits by improving these investment options across the board. We've also lowered the output of some of the most excessively powerful builds from Delirium, like those that utilized the Purposeful Harbinger notable passive and the Archmage Stormbrand builds. Simultaneously, those were two of my favorite builds, by the way, in all of Delirium. I played both of them. Honestly, I enjoyed the Archmage more than I enjoyed the Purposeful Harbinger stacking stuff. I just didn't enjoy it that much. Simultaneously, get out your torches and pitchforks, guys. I really didn't enjoy it. I played it for a few days, and I was like, this just breaks the game. This isn't fun. Simultaneously, we've also introduced many new options and playstyles for people to gain new levels of power. Okay. That's just an interesting worded statement, like right after this one. Like, hey, we nerfed stuff, but we've also buffed stuff. Okay. Okay, thanks. That's what patch notes do, guys. I guess if you've never read patch notes before, that's new news. Alright, two-handed weapons and slow attacks. Two-handed melee weapons focus. I'm going to move chat here for a second. I'm going to put chat down over here. There we go. Two-handed weapons, two-handed melee weapons focus on having great risk for great reward. But over time, their power has dropped relative to one-handed weapons. Yeah, you can say that again. We intend to bring this power back while still keeping the risk. Question for you guys in chat. Question. When was there a time that two-handed melee weapons were at such a stage that you guys were like, yep, two-handers are the best way to go and there's nothing that rivals two-handers? Because that's where dual wielding is right now. Dual wielding is just the best. Right? You can occasionally make an argument that in certain situations, like if you're playing hardcore or some very specific builds, shield plus a one-hander is better. But the vast majority of the time, dual wielding is better, right? Especially when we're talking melee. So, like, we can all meme, right? We can all meme, what's the phrase here in the United States? Make America great again, right? We can all meme, like, make two-handers great again. But when were they ever great to begin with? This is why I think the It's Yoji trailer does such a great job of introducing Harvest League, because he's like, and GGG is introducing two-handers to Exiles in Raid Class. Like, that line perfectly summed up where two-handers are at in the meta. Non-existent. Or at least not competitive. But this isn't a competitive game, so I'll say this. They're not as fun. At least for me. That's a subjective statement. They're not as fun. Slow, heavy hits now deal enough damage to stun, even though the toughest bosses, without as much... Oh, even the toughest bosses, without as much investment in stun mechanics. Okay, so you don't need to essentially gut your build to go grab a bunch of stun reduction in order to stun stuff. Good. So that means I fully expect more of those stun builds to come out for 3.11. Do any of you guys remember the Stun Lord builds that are like Stun the Shaper, Stun the Minotaur? There's several different videos. You can just Google or you can just type it into the YouTube search bar, like Stun builds, PoE. And throughout the time and history of PoE, there have been several of them that are quite good. Not all of them have used two-handers, by the way. New sources of area of effect and powerful inherent damage from skills and supports free up passive points for life and defenses if you choose to, including new options for a defensive Warcry effect and a new armor keystone. Okay, interesting. More armor? Molten shell? Say hello? All high-level two-handed melee weapons have been rebalanced, pushing greater disparity between weapon types. The goal is that every high-level two-handed weapon has a role and is an ideal base type for someone. For most two-handed weapon types, each weapon has its own implicit mod focusing on a specific mechanic associated with its weapon type. There have been new additions to the passive skill tree providing power and utility, especially for melee characters, like the Tribal Fury notable, that was once only available from Blight Anointments. Leech passives give much more total recovery per second for Life Leech than before, so reaching maximum Leech is much easier for slow attacks and two-handed attacks with some accessible investment. So why won't I just take this on a dual wielder? Like, if it's easier for slower attacks, wouldn't it be even easier for faster attacks to reach the cap? I don't know. I don't know. Many skills intended to work well with two-handed weapons have also been reviewed. Sunder, Static Strike, and Tectonic Slam were changed significantly, while many others had numerical changes. Some slow attacks with added damage have had it removed and their damage multiplier improved, as flat added damage inherently favors builds with high attack speed. You're darn right it does. Ground Slam, Earthquake, Ice Crash, Vaal Ground Slam, and Vaal Earthquake have all had their added physical damage or added cold damage removed in exchange for improving their damage multiplier. Guys, do you see this? This word right here. Do you guys see this? This is a buff, right? Two-handed league. Okay, maybe the multipliers are just going to be out of this world and it'll be amazing. Maybe. Why not just leave this and add this? It's not as though two-handers don't want flat added physical damage or flat added cold damage or any flat. It's not as though I'm using a two-hander and therefore I don't want flat. That'll be interesting. Many of the new war cries and the new Fist of War support for slam skills greatly benefit slower attacks, synergizing very well with two-handed weapons. There are now many powerful options to invest in for slow attacks rather than the handful of mechanics that existed previously. All right, good. I want to see this. I want to see this. I want to see those powerful options. Like, is there an option that, like, if you've hit an enemy, if you've only hit one enemy in the last 2 seconds, or like if you've only attacked, is there going to be like a conditional, like, you know how there's a recently condition that we use all the time throughout Path of Exile? You have, you know, if you've crit in the last 8 seconds, then you have, you know, 40% more elemental damage. There's elemental overload. You know, if you've, what is it? If you've killed an enemy recently, right? There's all kinds of recently stuff. Could there be like a, hey, if you've only attacked once in the last 5 seconds or 2 seconds or 0.5 seconds or if your attack speed is X, then you get an increase in damage? Or, I don't know, just retool two-handers so that way they just straight up have better damage. Straight up, give them additional affixes that are higher levels. I don't know. That's been my thing with two-handers since the two-hander rework has been announced. Just give them more damage. Like, just give two-handers flat better damage as two-handers that's available for crafting. You don't even have to make it available across the board, which is what they've done. They've given two-handers across the board a slight increase by improving all their implicits. So, we'll see. I would say at the top end is where you should just add another row of tier 1 stuff that two-handers can hit that one-handers just can't get to. Or maybe make it so that way it's something like a strength bonus. Right? Two-handers might require more strength to wield than a one-hander. So make it so that way there's like some big keystone on the tree that just gives you, you know, it doubles the damage bonus from your strength or something while wielding a two-hander. I don't know. Then we'll just have a bunch of Baron stacking builds again, right? But they wouldn't be Baron stacking. It would be strength stacking. I don't know. Herald of Purity has been changed from adding physical damage to granting more physical damage, giving 12% more physical damage at gem level 20. This was to provide an equal benefit to weapon attacks regardless of their speed. Okay, interesting. Shockwave support now has multiple cooldown charges as the new Fist of War doesn't work with triggered shockwaves. Shockwave support is best suited for slow, non-slam attacks. Okay, but what even is left that's not going to be slam? Like, everything is going to be a slam now. Not everything. What's not going to be a slam? Sunder? No, Sunder's a slam. Reeve? Cleave? I don't know, those you can attack, or you can scale with attack speed, though. Dual wield. The physical damage multiplier when dual wielding has been removed. They nerfed dual wielding. Okay! That instantly makes two-handers more attractive. We are back to 4 years ago in the was it 4 years ago or 3 years ago? I'm having a geriatric moment. Back in my day, I'm G3 Iron. You're watching YouTube. And back in my day before YouTube, Grinding Gear Games used to nerf stuff all the time. And they never buffed stuff. If something got buffed, people were just waiting for it to then get nerfed in the next league. That was true, by the way. People used to see something get buffed and then were just worried because they were worried it was going to instantly get nerfed the next league. This was originally intended as a hot fix. Don't say a hot fix, but it was a fix from half a decade ago to improve the damage of dual wielding relative to the higher damage of two-handed weapons and the overwhelming defensive power of shields at the time. This allows two-handed weapons to remain the kings of damage while dual wielding is the king of speed with some defensive benefits. Wow! Yeah. I'm pretty sure mirror tier threads with those jeweled foils are like now on, those guys are on like panic attacks. Because that has nothing to do with your item. Like a mirror tier jeweled foil is still going to be the mirror tier jeweled foil, but you're not going to want to use two of them. You're going to go for a two-hander, right? Especially if you're min-maxing. Yeah, those guys... Hey, if anybody just mirrored one of those. Like if you were just brought over a mirror today into Standard, or brought over enough currency to mirror a jeweled foil you had an idea on for a dual-wielding build, you're still going to have a great build. You're not going to have that little bit of a multiplier. It's not going to kill your build or something, but that's good to know. Brands. The design of brands. Wow. If this were a video, if I were recording this as a video, this would be a hard cut right there. Restart. Brands, the design of brands, make them very powerful for clearing out areas with a passive playstyle, as well as dealing damage to bosses with very little time spent standing still. This often meant brand characters weren't engaging with many challenging mechanics, instead running around waiting for enemies to die. I was engaging with challenging mechanics. I was dodging all of them. I was more engaged with Kitava slams, and with Minotaur slams, and with falling rocks, and with the Vaal Oversoul's lightning beam, and I was totally engaged. How dare you say I was running around with my Archmage Lightning Storm brand build, not engaging with mechanics. I was aware of more mechanics that could kill me than ever before. And that's coming from a player who normally just AFKs as a summoner. This often meant brand characters weren't engaging with many challenging mechanics, instead running around waiting for enemies to die. That's what I do when I'm summoning my zombies or my skeletons. I'm running around waiting for enemies to die. Oh, this is a great line. I love this line. I'm laughing with GG, guys. I'm not laughing at them. I'm laughing with them. Like, this is... It's funny because on the one hand, they've designed these really awesome boss fights with lots of these intricate mechanics. And partly to be a difficulty layer, right? Partly because you're paying attention to X, you can't pay attention to Y, and so Y comes down and kills you. I've lost many different hardcore characters to Y because I was paying attention to X. And by playing a brand character this past league, it's just like, yeah, you can pay attention to X and Y. You can be looking out for both of them. Just make sure your brands are still up. Keep smashing that brand recall. So that's good. That's good. We've known for some time that parts of these mechanics needed to change to tone down these advantages before we could introduce new brand skills. Or rather, brand new skills. Am I right, boys? Yeah. All right. They've endeavored to make these changes without heavily impacting the core identity of brands. You guys know what the core identity of brands are, right? You guys know? Do you guys know the core identity of brands? It's better totems. Mobile totems. I'm sorry, totem players, cover your ears. Do you know the identity of brands? It's better totems. Brands now drop at their original location or a recalled location when the enemy they are attached to is slain. This prevents them chaining repeatedly out of the player's control, killing monsters that haven't had a chance to meet the player yet. Brand Recall no longer refreshes the duration of brands. We very much appreciate the utility of Brand Recall, but it has played a significant part in making brand skills feel wow, I would cut there too. But it has played a significant part in making brand skills feel very passive. I don't know. Binding Brand Recall onto left click as you walk around. Don't you guys think that's that's pretty good? We want to move in the direction of players having to recast their brands more often with the option to invest in brand duration to reduce how often one must recast brands. Okay, that's fair. Brand Recall has a longer cooldown and a lower value of cooldown recovery per level. We've added Brand Recall cooldown recovery to a number of places on the passive tree to give new avenues for investing in this rather than receiving the full bonus just for leveling the gem. Okay. Okay. So now it's going to take passive points instead of just getting gem levels. Okay, that's fair. By the way, I should say so while you're watching the stream. If you're enjoying the stream, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. You guys know I hate to have to say that, but if I don't say it, you guys won't do it. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you like, subscribe, and ding the bell to be notified about future video discussions just like this one. And if you're a veteran of the channel, then just give us a thumbs up, because you know it helps us out. We've lowered the detached duration of brands to bring them in line with mines, which also had their detached duration lowered when last reviewed. This is simply because the duration was unreasonably long, especially with the new and plentiful brand duration passives. Okay, that's fair. Because of all these changes, we've been able to slightly improve the power of Storm Brand, greatly improve Armageddon Brand. Hey, I'm excited. That was one of my first Shaper Farmer builds, was an Armageddon Brand build using the Martyr of Innocence staff with just a boat ton of flat fire added damage. Improve the utility and power granted by brand passives, add a new brand cluster, and of course introduce new brands, including the Arcanist brand that lets you trigger many different spells using brands. The Hierophant brand node has also changed, mentioned below. Okay, interesting. All right, let's move on to War Cries. The philosophy behind War Cries. War Cries have changed significantly. Using a War Cry is now more powerful than before, but it comes with a longer use time and a longer cooldown. Cooldowns are no longer shared between War Cries. More notes can be found in the War Cry reveal post. We've already covered that. The goal of these changes is to have War Cries be something that has far more significant impact on combat, with great reward for taking the risk of standing still and using an ability while surrounded. That is not a hardcore viable strategy. The 40% of every single league that plays Cyclone at some point throughout the league does not like to stand still. And does not like to be surrounded. They like to kill things with massive AoE range using Cyclone from far distances away. Using multiple different War Cries is now possible, and a reason to heavily invest in a mechanic that you're able to take advantage of multiple ways on a single character. For those that prefer the old playstyle, we've added the keystone that lets you use the War Cry instantly at the cost of being unable to take advantage of multiple War Cries. This isn't a keystone that's designed for characters that have heavily invested in War Cries, but rather for characters that have a specific single War Cry they wish to take advantage of. So you can go instant, but you're limited to one War Cry. It's like what they did with Blood Magic. How it's like, hey, you can use one aura. Auras are too important in Path of Exile, so you can use one, but you can still go Blood Magic. What is it? What is that one called? I forget. Is it Mortal Conviction? Is that what I'm thinking of? I'm pulling up POB here. Mortal Conviction. You can only have one permanent non-banner aura. Yeah, there you go. Behind Blood Magic, because very rarely people take that. Okay. So it's like that, but it's for Warcries. Hey, you only get to use one, but now it's instant. Or you can not take the instant and you can use multiple Warcries. Which, wait a minute. Let's just think about this for just a second. Go back up to this statement about the risk of standing still. If you're going to use multiple Warcries, you're going to be standing still for even longer now because you don't have instant cast Warcries available to you. So if you want to use multiple Warcries, you're going to be standing still. Okay, so Warcries... Warcries are going to be something that summoners and support casters use. That's what it's going to be, right? If I'm playing solo, why do I want to stand still not for one cast, but for two different casts? I guess you could argue that during a boss encounter, while you're taking out Shaper or Elder or something like that, hey, it's a boss that's not getting eradicated in an instant anyway, or if it is getting eradicated in an instant, it's because you've Warcried recently that give you all the buffs that you need. This isn't a keystone that's designed for characters that have heavily invested in Warcries. Yep, because if they've heavily invested in Warcries, they want to cast two and stand still twice. Not once, but twice. I think Impy and other deep delvers that deep delve in a group are going to use this. Support characters are going to use Warcries now. Yes, guys, you still can have multiple Warcries, but here's the thing. Using multiple different Warcries is now possible, right? But you can't get it instantly. You can't get it instantly. Like, if you want to get Warcries instantly now, you're not able to take advantage of multiple Warcries. So if you want to bind your Warcry to left click... So they just buffed Warcries. Warcries are usable. I'm not saying they're not usable. But I'm saying they're getting we're getting targeted now. There's going to be a multiplayer set of Warcries that get used where players are using multiple different Warcries. Or maybe Warcries will just be like Vaal Aura Gems. And you'll just rotate them throughout your group. Maybe I'm thinking too heavily about groups. Because I'm looking to play mostly in groups this league. But that's... I think support characters need to consider how powerful Warcries are and if they're going to constantly keep them up. Dark Carry says, so if instant Warcries cost me 1 point, I'll take it and use it like a plus to my build. Yeah, exactly. If you can just instantly use a Warcry and put that on your left click, oh, bummer, you can't use multiple Warcries. That's fine. That's fine. But I'm saying what they're changing now is to be able to have these active multiple Warcries. Cooldowns are no longer shared between Warcries. That's a big change. That's the big deal that we're talking about here. This keystone is interesting. We knew about this with the Warcry post. We didn't know about this. So that's interesting. So it's buffed and limited at the same time? Yeah, it's going to be buffed for players who weren't using Warcries at all, because now they can use Warcries. And it's going to be limited in the sense that if you want to use multiple Warcries, you are essentially self-stunning yourself for those multiple different Warcries that you want to cast. And remember, while you're casting those Warcries, you're not casting your attack or your damage. Now that's fine if you've got other stuff to do damage for you. That's why I'm articulating an argument as to why support characters who are not primary DPS dealers in a group will now want to use multiple different Warcries. Because they might have the gem slots for it. And sharing cooldowns doesn't matter for them, and it doesn't stop their DPS because they're not doing DPS anyway. Many new Warcry passive clusters have been added. I wonder if some of these have been taken off in Delirium Jewels. That'll be interesting. Providing more avenues for investment in cooldown recovery, faster use time, giving more powerful damage bonuses when using exerted attacks, and rewarding the use of multiple Warcries. Many existing unique items with Warcry related mods have been changed significantly. Okay, so those of you mentioning uniques that allow for Warcry usage, they're probably getting changed. Yeah, most notably the Warband shields. There you go. Okay, Stun Boys. Stun Boys. Who's excited for Stun? Changes to the power of slow attacks have resulted in it being much easier to stun bosses simply because of how much damage you can do in a single hit relative to their health. Rather than increasing the stun threshold, bosses now become immune to stuns for a short duration after being stunned. I'm going to read this whole thing and then comment. Most major bosses and map bosses have a stun immunity duration of 2 seconds. This duration is longer on powerful bosses like Guardians, the Shaper, the Elder, and Cirrus, lasting 4 seconds. Stunning is now a great defensive advantage for slow, heavy-hitting characters without completely mitigating the threat of an encounter. Stun duration becomes more important as you can no longer chain together many short-duration stuns. Okay, so here's the question. Here's the question. The question is, can you get stun duration to last longer than stun immunity? If I can get my stun duration, right? That's the question. If I can get my stun duration to last, let's say for the case of this example, for longer than 2 seconds, then I can chain together longer duration stuns. But I won't be able to chain together short duration stuns. That's at least what they're aiming for, right? At least that's how it's worded here, is short duration stuns. So if we're aiming at long duration stuns, let's say in theory I can stun a boss for 100 seconds. Does that 100 seconds... does the duration of stun immunity start at the end of the 100th second, or does it start, 2 seconds after that? The stun duration should start as soon as they're stunned, right? As soon as that stun wears off, they're now immune for the next 2 seconds, right? Regardless if the stun lasts 1 second or 100 seconds, it's the next 2 seconds. If that's the case, then a long stun is only going to matter if you can complete, again, going for the meme build, if you can completely negate a boss's action ability by taking down their health while they're stunned. You need to have a stun duration that lasts as long as it takes you to get them from however much HP remaining to 0 in order to completely ignore their mechanics. Otherwise, it sounds like this stun immunity is just going to make it so that way, hey, you stunned him, but then after that stun wears off, he's coming back. And for at least 2 seconds, he's good. But maybe you can get the stun duration to come up, or maybe there will be something that'll lower this, like nearby enemies have 50% stun immunity duration or something. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. The most fun that I ever had with a stun build was the super duper fast attacking stun build that just perma-stunned, like, Shaper. It was ridiculous. You can Google it. You can just Google perma-stun Shaper. It's amazing what that guy was able to do. What that build was able to do. That was my favorite. That was the only build that I was ever tempted to be like, I should go play stun. I want to mess around with stun. And sure enough, that whole league, I then went around and messed around with stuns and found out how bad they are unless you go with that perma setup. Ascendancy changes. We've made some changes to the hero font. Chieftain. Hey! Who was it that wanted Chieftain buffs? We've got Chieftain buffs. Or Chieftain changes. We'll see if they're buffs. Chieftain and Berserker that we'll be revealing soon. Okay, so those will come out with patch notes, right? Or will those come out in between now and patch notes? Have I gotten a notification that Bex has posted those yet? Nah, she wouldn't post 2 big announcements like that back to back, right? There's no way. There's no way. There's no way. Okay, Ascendancy changes. There are changes to 1 major notable on each tree, focusing on creating powerful individual mechanics that greatly influence how you play, rather than overloading Ascendancies with a plethora of related stats, which is kind of what they did when they redid all the Ascendancies. But that's an argument from 2 years ago. We don't need to rehash it. Okay, so the hero font, we already know what they're doing there, right? They're going to mess with the brands side of the hero font. I can probably guess what they're doing with the chieftain. They're probably messing with the chieftain and making him more of the Armageddon brand guy. I wouldn't be surprised if brands came up on chieftain. And then the hero font's not the only brand ascendancy, right? What do you guys think? I'm making a prediction here. Here is a prediction that is 99% chance sure to go wrong. They're going to put brands or do some kind of brand support with chieftains. We'll find out. Tune in tomorrow in about 24 hours to find out when we're reading patch notes if I'm full of crap. Berserker is obviously going to get changed due to all the Warcry stuff, right? The Necromancer's Corpse Pack notable now has a maximum of 200% increased attack and cast speed from consuming corpses, as it was possible to get the value to self-scale to problematic numbers using Arcanist brand. Okay. I just have to say this personally. You guys might not have this interest, but I do. Whenever GGG makes a statement like this, like, hey, we found something internal and broke the game. Like, if I ever get the chance to interview somebody at GGG or have questions for them, I think that would be a great question to be like, hey, do you guys have any footage of that? Or what was that experience like? Or what did it do to make you say, hey, we can't let this go through? Like, what as you were internally testing something? I've got to figure out a way how to phrase this as a journalist would phrase it, right? So that way the question can actually be good enough to be answered. But the question would be something like, hey, tell me a story about something that got nerfed during development because it was simply, it was unscalable, right? It was broken internally and you guys recognized it. Like, tell me something you guys caught before it was released, because it sounds like this is an instance of that. Something that I will say, the last thing that I'll say about Ascendancy changes, I think those were some of my favorite patches where we saw big changes to Ascendancies and Ascendancy reworks. I think those were some of my favorite patches. Not some of my favorite leagues, but I think those were some of my favorite patches. Where you had all this new potential theory crafting stuff to go on. And where you would just see the reveal. I can remember, maybe I was wearing even this shirt. Maybe I had a few more hairs on my beard and a few more hairs on my head. Maybe I had a few less children. Shout out to Mrs. Draconis. But I remember that fondly. Okay, let's move on. Enough nostalgia. Back in my day, I remember when you had to walk both ways uphill to get to Lion Eye's watch. And Hillock would kill you both ways. Keystones. We've added new keystones to the Marauder Duelist section of the tree. These allow investment in slow impale attacks, mitigating big hits with armor, and making Warcries more accessible to non-Warcry invested builds. Each of these allows you to improve some weakness that certain strength-based characters, especially two-handed melee characters, could have. Many powerful keystones that were previously only available from Timeless Jewels have been moved to the passive tree, such as Glancing Blows, the Agnostic, and Wind Dancer. Alright, cool. Other passive tree changes. Guys, how long is this? I don't even... I'm not looking at the titles. I'm not looking at the headers, okay? I'm just scrolling down to see how long is Bex's post. Okay, not... Okay, here's the first next post. Okay, where are we? Go all the way to the top and then I can look. Okay. We're what, like a third of the way through? This is a really in-depth, like, manifesto. I like this. Dear Grinding Gear Games, good job. Thank you, guys. I like this. Other passive tree changes. We've made a large number of changes to the passive tree with the intent of supporting recently introduced mechanics as well as providing more variety to clusters, especially those lacking in obvious power. We wanted to add support for mechanics that have been added in the past few years that as of yet do not have adequate support on the passive tree. Okay, I like it. Some of these mechanics include Rage, Unleash, Corpse Manipulation, War Cries, Heralds, and Banners. The War Cry clusters that affect exerted attacks are very useful for slower attacks. Is there a cooldown on exerted attacks? Or are we just going to see speed boys use exerted attacks? The Martial Experience Cluster is a good example of how total recovery per second from Life Leech has improved. Now taking the longer path through this cluster will give 220% increased total recovery per second from Life Leech, enough to cause a single hit to be able to leech up to 6.4% of your maximum life per second. These changes were made so a big hit against a boss still provides significant life leech per second rather than having to attack rapidly to reach maximum life leech per second. I still wonder if we'll just go back to the Vaal pack days, right? Where we'll just attack fast because get to maximum leech instantly so that way you have even less chance of dying, right? I don't know. GGG's aware of the Vaal Pact meta. They never want to see that meta again. Or at least that's what they've said in the past. Maybe they'll rotate it in some point again. Maybe this is the start of that rotation. I don't know. I guess that's worthy of at least a point of clarification or a point of explanation. Guys, it used to be, I'm going to pull this up really quick on POB. It used to be that Vaal Pact didn't say life leech per second is doubled. In fact, I'm going to pull it up, exactly what it used to say. Just so that way you guys can know just how broken it was and why it is that life leech is in the state that it was. Okay, here is a... Can you guys see this? Hopefully you guys can see this. It looks like you guys can see it. If you can't see it, too bad. Alright, in 3.1, Vaal Pact has been significantly reworked. It no longer grants instantaneous life leech. That's what it used to do. There used to not be a timer on life leech. It was just you did damage, you got HP back. And instead doubles the rate of your life leech as well as your maximum leech rate. It has been moved into the duelist area. I'll just let you guys think what you guys could do if you could have instant life leech all the time. Oh, that's right. You can make near invulnerable builds. Yeah, and there were lots of them. Not actually invulnerable builds, but there was a wide spectrum of builds that simply was like, hey, go take Vaal Pact. That's what you do. Many passive skills offered the same thing as other clusters, with the only differences being the location on the tree and the number of passive skills in the cluster. In this patch, we've endeavored to give each cluster its own identity and function. Okay, GGG. GGG. What are they doing to spiritual aid? What are they doing to redemption? What are they doing to righteous army? What are they doing with death attunement? What are they doing with Lord of the Dead? What does this line mean for summoners? Maybe it'll just be going towards stuff like for melee stuff or for generic bow stuff. But I feel like a lot of the minion stuff is a bit more specified, right? There's unique bonuses to each cluster for minions. Like spiritual aid is different from Lord of the Dead. It's not just the numerical value or the positioning of the tree. So maybe minions aren't getting touched at all. Maybe those passives aren't getting touched. This I'm going to convince myself this is just going to be for generic items that are like staves and axes and swords, and that I'm convincing myself of that and moving on. Critical strike multiplier. I'm being a boomer, right? I'm looking at someone's Facebook post that I don't like, and I'm convincing myself that it means what I want it to mean, and then I'm moving on. Is that how I be a boomer? Am I doing it right, guys? I'm not even on Facebook. That's probably the least boomer thing about me. I'm not even on Facebook. Critical strike multiplier values have been lowered from almost every passive, as well as some other items. Critical-based characters far exceeded non-critical characters later in the game. This will bring the two a little closer. I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like that. Yeah, more mirror tier stuff that's going legacy. Right? That's what that means. I don't know. I don't know about this one. I don't know about this one. Like, in order to really get top value for your crit multi, you've got to push like 400 plus crit multi to get to start to get top value. And a lot of the times the top guys are getting like 500 plus. Is this just because of Malagaro's I forget, what are they called? Malagaro's... They're gloves. They're gloves. Come on, guys. Help my geriatric brain. Malagaro's virtuosity. Is that what they are? Yeah, the deerskin gloves that give you just... Your crit strike multiplier is 300. Is that why this is getting lowered? Because if that's why this is getting lowered, like, too many people were using them because of the Purposeful Harbinger stuff. Like, the reason why people were going crit on Purposeful Harbinger were because they could use those. And it was such a unique build and a unique dependent build, they had no room to stack crit multi. But why... Maybe this is a way to actually bring damage down, right? Maybe this is some of their check to power creep. Is that why? Hey, Narlucci, thanks. You got it right, man. You got it right. But is that why this is going on? Like, us as players, we're getting so much power from so many other places that they're like, hey, we got to reel this in just a little bit. Guys, for those of you who are complaining that this is so many nerfs, by the way, just so you realize, this is like not even an eighth of the nerfs that we used to see in Path of Exile. Path of Exile used to be almost exclusively nerfs in their balanced manifestos and in their patch notes. We used to call them nerf manifestos. That's what we called them. Like, the fact that this manifesto didn't start out... Where's my paint? Where's paint? We're going to the paint, guys. We're going to the paint. The fact that this balanced manifesto... Okay, this is what balanced manifestos used to look like. Okay, here's a graph. Okay, here's N for nerf, right? And here's what, T for time, like time throughout the nerf or throughout the manifesto. This is what it used to look like in a manifesto. It was just when there was time, as you were reading through the manifesto, there were nerfs. Like, if this was a biblical recounting of a manifesto, it would be in the beginning there were nerfs, and then in the middle there were more nerfs. And in the day of days and the end of times, at the end of the manifesto, there were even more nerfs. That's what manifestos used to be. Now, it seems like it's like, hey guys, we got some buffs. You know, we got a little guy over here. He's all, you know, he's got two little eyes over here, and he's got, what has he got? He's got like a little happy, stupid. Hey, I like things. I like things. Cause look, he's happy because there's buffs. There's buffs. And it's taking us this far to get to nerfs. Not bad. Not bad, right? That's what balanced manifestos used to be. So the fact that at least maybe they're just getting better in their presentation, maybe there's still just as many nerfs. But the way how they're presenting things is definitely something. Loderick says dots are not getting touched. Yeah, but the flat chaos damage is... That whole wheel is getting hit hard with the change with Wither. So, sure, dots aren't getting touched, but ED Contagion boys are like, ah! So, Valdera says they nerfed the Manifesto's Manifesto's nerfing power has been nerfed. Oh, where is it? Oh, is this what you're saying? You're saying you have no power here, Manifesto. Oh, that's funny. Oh man, that's pretty great. We've added a new indigo oil between the azure and violet oils. This has made more common oils slightly rarer without making rarer oils even rarer. What? How am I supposed to read this? This has made common oils slightly rarer without making rarer oils even more rarer. Okay, so we're bringing up the threshold. So the bottom tier of oils is coming up in rarity without pushing the top tier, up in rarity. I get it. Some notables will have updated oil costs as a result of changes to the passive tree. That's fair. Not every indigo oil combination on amulets will yield a notable yet. That's because they're leaving more room for PoE2's passive tree? Maybe. There are no new blighted notable passives, and 2 existing blight notable passives are now on the passive tree. Oh, interesting. New ring and blighted map anointments have been added. Cool. All right, this is what, back in the day, we would have started out with. Just cluster jewels. Like, hey, how are we integrating Delirium into the game, and how are we nerfing it? All right, let's see. Cluster jewels will remain in the game, available from Delirium encounters. Delirium encounters will be less common, but will drop significantly more cluster jewels than before, as we still want cluster jewels to be an accessible and major part of character development, especially if you're actively trying to find them. Good! So SSF people can still get cluster jewels. Many cluster jewel notables were problematic when stacked multiple times. Rather than limiting notables to 1, we've instead rebalanced or significantly changed these notables, or added caps to the maximum value you can receive from a certain kind of effect. Hey, that's what they did with Vaal Pact. They just said, hey, life leech limited now. They've rebalanced or significantly changed. Of particular note, Purposeful Harbinger now gives you aura buffs from skills have 8% increased effect on you for each herald affecting you, up to 40%. This means that with 5 heralds on you and 1 Purposeful Harbinger notable, you can reach full effect. Or you can use 3 heralds and 2 Purposeful Harbinger notables. But full effect is 40%. There you go. Vulture says, feels like they nerfed dual wield and Herald of Purity flat physical added in order to make two-handed look better. Yeah, you have accurately summarized what they've done. There's a slight buff coming to two-handers, but yeah, the fact that they took away flat physical for dual wielding, I don't think it's going to make it so that way two-handers are the meta any more than... I think the biggest influencers for why people are going to play two-handers are because people on Twitch and on YouTube are going to promote two-handed builds because we're curious and we want to play them. That's why. It's not going to be because they're going to be top tier. Somebody's going to figure out something that's... This happens every league now. Every league now. Somebody figures out something that's busted and rolls with it and steamrolls it, and that becomes the meta about 3 weeks into a league. That's what happens. And generally, it's not the stuff that gets buffed. Generally. Changes to Warcries have meant that all Warcry Cluster Jewel notables have been reworked, which also introduced some new effects. Okay, that'll be interesting. Some Cluster Jewel brand notables have also been rebalanced. Weightings of notables and other modifiers have been adjusted. Hey, so those of you who have crafted your Cluster Jewels, be aware. With the most powerful notables and 2 jewel sockets being much less common, as crafting an exceptional Cluster Jewel was far too easy. Okay, that's fair. The unique jewels from the Simulacrum will still be available, though they will be rarer as a result of Delirium not being in every area. Voices and Megalomaniac are unchanged, while split personality is now limited to 2. Wah, wah. This jewel was the go-to jewel for any attribute stacking build, so we want to push more variation. Well, there goes my hope. There goes my hope. I've got a character that's got 2,500 or 2,600 some odd strength in standard. Something stupid. I was just waiting for those split personalities to come. To roll from Delirium into standard to push that guy's strength even further, but that's not going to happen now. Oh well. Oh well. No keystones from any of the Delirium unique jewels have been changed. Though, like the Simulacrum jewels, these will be less frequent as you'll be encountering the unique bosses that drop them less frequently. These cluster jewel notables will no longer be available. Gladiatorial combat, deep cuts, haha, deep cuts, haha, hey guys, impale boys. There's a big old middle finger to those guys, right? That's what GGG just did. Deep cuts is gone. Intensity, confident combatant, no witnesses. Any existing notables already on jewels will be retained. Hey, so congrats, you guys now have standard legacy stuff. Some notables or some of their effects have been moved to the passive tree, with deep cuts being the only exception. Yeah, deep cuts they just wanted to get rid of. They're like, no. Get out of here. You impale, filthy people, you make me sick. That's what GGG is saying there. They said deep cuts was too far. It was too problematic. Vaal Molten Shell. Termochilla says, yes, we want to make cluster jewels accessible, but we're also making it harder to get a good one. No, so here's the thing, Term. Here's the thing. You're right in some aspect, right? You're right in some aspect. But what they're aiming to do is they're making it so that way you get the jewels supposedly easier to what you normally would get if Delirium was going core and it just popped up 10% of the time, right? Then you'd almost never get a cluster jewel. So they're trying to make it so that way you can get cluster jewels, period. But then once you get them, you're going to have to spend more currency crafting them. Vaal Molten Shell. Okay, this is what we said earlier. We're getting new keystones with armor, so what's happening to Vaal Molten Shell? Vaal Molten Shell was providing too much damage mitigation for too long with too little investment. This resulted in Vaal Molten Shell being used on a huge proportion of characters, including those that didn't get much armor beyond a granite flask. Hey, quit talking about my stupid hardcore solo self-found Scion summoner that used Necro and Gladiator. Granite Flask and Vaal Molten Shell OP. We intend to keep it as the best defensive Vaal skill for armor-invested characters, while bringing it closer in power to Vaal Grace. It will still last for a long duration, but now requires a greater value of armor to reach its cap, and mitigates a much lower percentage of damage. While active, it also gives more armor instead of a flat value of armor, multiplying your existing armor value rather than giving an effect that is less relevant to armor-invested characters. Vaal Molten Shell also removes and is removed by other guard skills. Previously, it only had this effect with Molten Shell. Molten Shell itself will also remain unchanged. Okay. Cyclone! Ah! Oh, I want to do a little dance. Make a little love. I'm sorry. Those of you who like Cyclone, I'm glad you like Cyclone. You should enjoy Cyclone. It's a fantastic skill, and it's got way too much utility built into it when it's got stun immunity. This is what we've been saying. Oh, man. I feel like we've been saying this since the days the pyramids were constructed. Cyclone has got movement, it's got damage, it's got scaling, it's got speed, it's got bossing. It should not have stun immunity. Oh, man, there are so many ascendancies. Ascendancies are like some of the most amount of power that is packed into a character. And many ascendancies don't have access. Not just certain ascendancy nodes. Whole ascendancies don't have access to stun immunity. But, just slap Cyclone on there. Yeah, you're stun immune. We've removed the stun immunity from Cyclone, but made no other changes to it. Good. So it's still smooth. It's still fun. But if you want to become stun immune, go get it elsewhere. It's not built into the flippin' gem. Yes, I'm going to have an aneurysm over this. I'm so glad they finally did that. Go away, Cyclone. Go away. Don't be flavor of the month Cyclone. Be good Cyclone. You know, I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that for so long players have gotten used to, oh yeah, I'll just slap, what's your stun immunity? How are you going to deal with big hits? I'll just use Cyclone. That's what I'll do. Okay, but there's so much more thinking that you can do in the game. There's so many more Jenga pieces that you can be playing with. But instead you're just holding up this one Jenga piece and going, why? I just use this. There's a lot more to the game than just Cyclone, man. This immunity was originally added to prevent implementation problems when positional desync was common, not as a core part of the skill's design. Being able to move while dealing damage is already a powerful defensive benefit. Yeah, it is. And melee attackers are usually more resistant to stuns. This skill will still make you immune to knockback, and Vaal Cyclone will still retain its stun immunity. Hey, there you go. There's a reason to actually use Vaal Cyclone. I mean, nobody still will, but there's a reason. There's a reason. It's not a great reason. It's not a compelling reason, but there's a reason. Archmage. Okay, what are they doing to my boy? Look at what they've done. Look at what they've done to my boy. Archmage support provided 2 significant power increase for builds when built around very heavily. Why? Why? We want to build around Archmage. Come on now. Don't I sound like one of those Cyclone boys now? Why are you nerfing my favorite thing? This is my favorite. I love this thing. Yeah, but Archmage, okay, to be fair, to compare Cyclone and Archmage, Archmage just came out. Cyclone has been this way for 5 patch cycles? Since Legion, right? Legion. Then what? Oh man, I'm having a geriatric moment. Legion, Blight, Metamorph, Delirium. 4 cycles. 4 cycles. Archmage. It's out for 1 league. Nerf it. Away with you, you wicked witch Archmage. We've made changes to bring it more in line with other builds while still noting that it's going to be a huge source of power for mana-invested builds. Good, because that's like the point of it, right? It now provides less added lightning damage based on mana spent than it did before, down to 108% of mana cost at level 20. We've changed most items that increase mana cost. Fevered Mind has been reworked and is now limited to 1. Why? Why? Guys, look at how they've massacred my boy. Guys, somebody explain this to me. Why? Why? Guys, somebody, anybody, make an argument, say something. Why? Are they worried that, like, people are going to go from the Purposeful Harbinger meta to just everybody's going to be playing Archmage? If that's an argument, okay, make that argument. Why? Greer says I can easily get around stun immunity, but I can't against these Archmage changes. Yeah, stun immunity, you can find that in the rest of your build and still play Cyclone. Archmage, it's like, what? Why mess with Fevered Mind? You're already messing with Archmage. Now why mess with Fevered Mind on top of it? Voidbringer and a Pepe's Rage now add flat mana cost rather than a percentage modifier. Okay, but the top builds weren't even using a Pepe's Rage. And a Pepe's Rage was finally getting usage out of some meme builds. These items provided too great a damage multiplier from a single unique, as their once downside has now become an upside. That's why you added Archmage support, guys. What was it? If I sound like I'm yelling at GGG, I'm not. I love this game. I support this game. I spent hundreds of dollars on this game. I'm all about Path of Exile. If I sound like I'm getting upset, it's because I'm invested. It's not because I'm tilted or angry, or want to be vicious here. I don't understand this explanation. Chris says, can you make a video about the Archmage nerf? I mean, the video's happening live right now, Chris. That's the whole point, is that those particular items did have a downside for any build, but there was this whole new avenue, and it was called Archmage, that made something that used to be a downside now an upside, and very, very cool in that regard. It was unique. It was a diversity of builds that was added into. We've added a new passive cluster on the tree to let you increase the mana cost of your skills as a new avenue of investment, though at values much lower than what could be gained from those unique items. Ronnie says they needed to nerf mana return items, not to destroy the ability to gain increased mana cost. Greer says Iron should be drinking heavily during that video. Nick says, I think it was because Fevered Mind was never supposed to be a positive module. Okay, kind of like if pacifism all of a sudden became really good. Yeah, but there are builds that take advantage of pacifism. Gepesio says, Good Guy Gaming means you won. Won what? What did I win? Winning is having fun. I was having fun playing Archmage. I don't know if I'll have fun playing Archmage now. I don't know. It'll still be really good. Getting this amount of lightning damage is still really good. Chris says they already killed the Archmage Stormbrand interaction, so I don't understand why they had to hit it harder. To actually scale Archmage, it already took an insane amount of investment. Yeah, amen, dude. Amen. I'm right there with you. I think I've been on record and have said this multiple times. I think builds that require a ton of investment ought to be very powerful. As you scale into the game, the more you invest, the better your character should get. It's a bummer. Seeing different uniques like Fevered Mind go from useless and nobody using them to all of a sudden becoming useful, not meta-defining, but useful, I think that's one of the beauties of Path of Exile. In its business model and in its system of updating. I think that's some of the beauties of it. But alright, unique rebalance. We've made many changes to unique items that were either failing to achieve their desired goals, you mean like Fevered Mind, had fallen behind other competing items, you mean like a Pepe's Rage, or were not deemed interesting enough for our current standards for unique items. Okay, that's fair. Our goal for each of these unique items is to make sure there is a place for them on characters, even if that place is while leveling, and to do so, and to do this in more interesting ways where possible. So in other words, hey, we've got a crap ton of uniques that are relatively useless, so we're going to rework them so that way maybe they're only useful for like 10 levels, but at least they're useful there. I can get behind that. Many of the changes are numerical. Yep, so that's going to be the leveling stuff. Either because the item was already significantly interesting or because it would stray too much from a supporter's original intention when the item was designed. More information will be coming in the patch notes. Two-handed unique weapons have been reviewed and tweaked as a result of their base types being changed. Overall, rare items should be more competitive with the most powerful unique items, and there will be a greater variety of useful unique two-handed weapons. A few unique weapons that provided too much power, especially after changes to their base type, have had their values lowered. Starforge, Disintegrator, and Hegemony's Era will now have lower damage per second than on live, while other items remain the same or improved. This is my what face. What? Starforge is a drop that drops from Shaper. Shaper is an endgame boss. It should be really flippin' powerful. Right? Starforge received the most significant reduction of damage. It provided more physical damage than any other unique weapon by a huge margin. As it was designed before, pure physical damage was a competitive way to build skills. It is now more in line with the damage of other unique weapons while retaining its special shock, area, and life modifiers. It now has a custom implicit of 30% increased global physical damage, as the Infernal Sword base type now usually gives 30% increased elemental damage with attack skills. Bow League. I'm really trying hard not to be cynical here. I'm literally just sitting on a lot of words that I could say. Maybe I should stand up and let the words out, huh? No, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to say anything. The circle of fear, nostalgia, regret, anguish, and guilt unique rings that affected heralds will now give lower values of reservation cost reduction and lower values of buff effect. These rings provided too much power and were too obvious a choice for so many builds. They're tearing apart anything that had to do with Purposeful Harbinger, I guess. I guess that's what that is. Savior price going down to 5x in 1, 2, 3. Yeah, exactly. Savior's. That's an exaggeration. Savior's not crap. Savior's not terrible. Dual wielding is still a thing, but it's not as powerful as it used to be. You're already hitting Purposeful Harbingers. I don't understand why hitting this stuff that's already super duper rare. I don't know. I don't know. These are still some of the most exciting days. What I said at the beginning of the stream still stands. These are two of the most exciting days that come around every 4 months. Patch notes and Balanced Manifesto are great days. It's just sometimes you read stuff and you go, why? I wonder why. I wish I had more information about that decision. Threshold Jewels. The unique Threshold Jewels for Dual Strike, Magma Orb, Molten Strike, and Fireball have been changed. They now provide effects that change how the skill is built or downsides to offset their beneficial effect, each acting as a way to change how you play the build or play a skill rather than a must-have boost at the cost of a jewel slot. Good. Let's see if they can deliver on that. I think that's a really, really tough design thing to do. It's going to be interesting to see. Glacial Hammer's Shattered Change Threshold Jewel will no longer drop. Why are they giving this the Violent Dead treatment? Increase cold damage. 20% increased rarity of items dropped by enemies shattered by glacial... Was this breaking the meta? Were people using this to abuse, like, item farming? I want to know why. I'm not going to get to, but I would like to know why. All of these skills have been given increases to damage, area, or utility to compensate for the power lost from the threshold jewel. We'll continue to look at the roles of other threshold jewels over time, making changes when possible and appropriate. Slower projectiles. Barrett says, LOL, that face. Barrett, this is my face, man. I can't get another face. I know, I probably looked weird while I was looking at something. That's probably what you were referring to. Slower projectiles. The slower projectiles support gem now grants a lower value of less projectile speed than before. This is because this single support was massively multiplying the close range damage of certain skills. Yeah, it was. But that's what it was supposed to do. And all of them were being balanced around the value from this support. It means that we can be more generous with projectile speed granted by other sources. Okay. That's fair. Molten Strike, like when you nerf something because it's limiting your design space, I get it. Like when they did that with flasks, when they did that with Lore Weave about max elemental resistances, as they've moved the max elemental resistances cap lower and lower each time, like I get it. It's limiting your design space, so I get it. Molten Strike, Magma Orb, and Ball Lightning have had their damage and some other properties improved. Ball Lightning Miners, as their close range damage is now affected by lowered projectile speed. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are wondering whether or not you should play a Ball Lightning Miner to League Start, it will smash bosses. So, if your goal is to smash bosses, you did it. That's your League Starter. Okay? They did it. If that was their goal, they have accomplished it. If they were trying to tell everybody, hey, go play Ball Lightning Miner, if your hand can take playing a miner, then go for it. Ninjano says, I'm looking at PoE Ninja, and there are 8 builds that use Glacial Hammer. So no, I don't think this is messing with the meta. So, Ninjano, that's good that you're looking at PoE Ninja. Here's part of the problem with looking at PoE Ninja. Part of the problem with looking at PoE Ninja at this point in the league is this is a point in the league where it's only going to show a small fraction number of players because of the XP range of the ladder. And so, you know, if you're only looking at players and pulling data from players who reach level 98 and above, it doesn't really tell you about potentially millions of other players who never make it past, like, Act 3, right? And some of these changes get made because of those players. Those of you who want to disagree with that, I'll just say one word. Bots. Okay, there's a lot of bots. And so if bots can abuse something inside the game, they're never going to show up on PoE Ninja. But especially if they're abusing rarity on stuff, that can be a thing. So, anyway, that's just... GGG has said stuff in the past about that. They generally don't comment on stuff like that anymore, but that's something that's been said in the past. Other smaller changes. The Shikari Pantheon has had its modifiers changed to half the duration of poison on you and prevents you being poisoned while you have at least 5 poison effects on you. This Pantheon power trivialized a mechanic that was core of one of our 4 major guardians of the current endgame and prevented poison being a threatening mechanic to any character. Yeah! I know! That's why I took it! That's what made fighting the Hunter bearable, was taking the Shikari Pantheon. I guess now I got to go back to using a flask, right? We've made improvements to Totem AI for certain skills that add special targets, like Blade Blast, and corpse skills like Detonate Dead, Volatile Dead, Cremation, and Body Swap. Oh, interesting. Body Swap totems? Anybody? Anybody? Why would you do that when you could just play brands? When you can put almost any spell on brands? You know, they really wanted to recapture the essence of what brands are, which is better totems. Pedro says they found the one useful Pantheon for one league. Yeah, and now they're like, no, stop doing that. The Pantheon is one of those systems that I feel like GGG regrets they put into the game. Not because it's too powerful, but because it's almost... It's so conditional that it almost doesn't matter if you don't have it. So many build guides, I'm just saying this from my perspective. This is my anecdotal perspective. So many build guides don't even include suggestions on Pantheon powers. That doesn't mean that everybody shouldn't include it. I'm just saying, as somebody who reads through copious amounts of notes of build guides every single week to comb the forums and to find great build guides to recommend to you guys, so that way we can discuss them. Like, it's not that important. Knowing which bandits to kill is more important than knowing about the Pantheon. And the Pantheon supposedly deals with the whole second half of the game with all the bosses there. I don't know if that's more power creep, less power creep, but it feels like it's just less impactful. Hexproof now gives immunity to curses, on top of preventing any curse being applied. This means that if you gain Hexproof, you'll immediately remove any curses on you. This was an oversight that wasn't already the case, and will mean that stealing Hexproof from enemies will now clear all curses from you. Okay, that's a nice Headhunter buff. This outlines just a portion of the changes you'll see in Path of Exile Harvest. They are still subject to change prior to release, and you'll see more information in the patch notes tomorrow. We look forward to seeing how players wield the new power introduced in Path of Exile Harvest, and in the meantime, we'll pour out a flask for our fallen meta builds. Excellently written, Bex. You and your team did a great job. There's lots of teasing statements, lots of statements that make me want to ask more questions. You guys always do a great job. You really do. All right, so as we wrap up tonight's discussion on the game balance for 3.11 and the balance manifesto, go ahead, if you're new to the channel, to make sure that you like, subscribe, and ding the bell. Tomorrow at roughly this same time, we don't know exactly when patch notes come out. We're all going to be spamming Bex over the next 24 hours on her Twitter, on Reddit, everywhere. Just leave her alone for a little bit. She's working on patch notes, and the whole team at GGG is working on them. So leave her alone. They'll post the patch notes when they go live. We'll all get the notification, and then come right here, join us on YouTube, because we will do a live reading of the patch notes. We'll all read and react together. We'll all be control F'ing to find out what exactly gets nerfed in our builds. One thing that I like to do with every patch notes reading is go through and move all of the words. I do a word count, so I take the entire patch notes and I move it over from the actual web page onto a document just to see how many words it is, and then I compare the patch notes. So I think that's one thing that us and us alone here at G3 do. Maybe other people do that. I'm just not aware of it. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us tonight for our discussion on the balance notes. Go ahead and drop us a comment down below. Let us know what you think are going to be the biggest changes, the biggest disappointments, and of course the biggest excitements about the upcoming changes to the Harvest League. I'm very excited that Cyclone stun immunity is getting nerfed. I know a lot of you aren't excited about that. I'm excited for it. I'm glad for that. Like, Cyclone is good enough on its own. There's stun immunity available elsewhere. I'm confused about some things, like notably Fevered Mind and Archmage at the same time. I'm glad about the way how they are implementing Delirium jewels. So those are just some of my initial thoughts. Feel free to drop us a comment down below. And as always, I hope 3.11 Harvest League is the league that a Mirror of Calandra will drop for you.